Hello everyone. Welcome to Spring Boot tutorial series by GR Academy. This is tutorial 10, Swagger documentation. So till now in our journey we have seen many important topics, and if you haven't watched them, then I recommend you guys go back and watch my previous videos. And many more important videos are coming on various technologies, so please subscribe for more. And let's get started with this tutorial. So in this tutorial, we will look into Swagger documentation tool, and to understand more, consider world without standards. So for example, remove time zone from the world, and you will see the whole world will be confused and everything will be affected from transportation to business. So basically we need something common and comparable, right? So same way in software world, we have amazing coding skill and so much knowledge about handling big data and much more things. But to create successful software ecosystem, we need to communicate. We need to share this data, and API is a very good way to share and communicate. But with rapid development and various frameworks and technologies, we were in need of some guidelines or some documentation to create API, some standards. So every time we create some API, we need to share it with someone so that other developers can work on this. So this someone could be someone from your team, or it could be somewhere in the other part of the world. So we need good documentation, because good documentation can lead us to less confusing and faster development, and the wrong documentation can lead us to big mess. And additionally, developer cannot make all this document himself, because ideally developers time should spend more on the coding side and logic side. So someone needs to do this documentation, and Swagger can solve all our problems. So Swagger is a documentation tool that automates documentation with predefined standard, and it is open source, and Spring have built-in support for that. So in this tutorial, we will look into this tool, how to configure them, and we will see different feature of the Swagger. So first thing is to add Swagger in our project, and to add Swagger in our Spring Boot project, it's a three-step process. First one is to add dependencies. So if you see here, we have two dependencies, and one is for Swagger and one is for UI support. So basically, UI support is the came later, but if you add just first dependency, then you will be able to use Swagger. But the data coming from Swagger will be in JSON form, so it's not a human readable form. And Swagger UI will represent the data to you in a human readable form. And second step is to enable Swagger from our code. So after after putting dependency in our code, we need to enable it by our code. And the next step is to restart our application. So that is very simple. So let's get to our Eclipse and add Swagger in our project. So this is our old project that we created for our previous tutorial. This is our basic employee management system. And in this project, we're gonna add Swagger. So as I mentioned, we have three-step process to add Swagger. So first step is to add the dependency. So let me go to my browser, and here I'm opening Maven repository. And here I can search for SpringFox Swagger. And here if I see this one, SpringFox Swagger 2.9.2, and let me copy this and paste it in my pom.xml file. So I'm opening pom.xml, and here at the very last I can add with other dependencies. So deleting the comment and saving the file. And now second step is to enable this from the code, enable Swagger from the code. So there are a couple of ways to do that. So normally I can do this from our main root class, but in real world we normally create our another separate class for Swagger configuration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another class here with the same level as our main class, and here I'm creating Swagger config class. And here, so to enable our Swagger, we have one annotation enable Swagger 2 for version 2, and this one is a configuration file, so I'm putting at the red configuration also. So I'm control as saving it, and then I'm restarting my application. So once this application is restarted, and if I go to my Postman, and this is the API v2 API-docs, and if I hit enter, then if you see here we have all the information about our application APIs. So let me go down. So this is the actuator, because we already have actuator in our code. And if I go down, we have this employee add, which is a post method, and we have all the other descriptions such as parameters, responses, and all. But this format is not a human readable form. This is in JSON. So Spring Boot have another dependency, which have UI support. So you can create UI on your own on this JSON if you want, or you can use inbuilt UI. So let's go with inbuilt UI, and here I can go with that Swagger to UI dependency, and let me search that, and this one is Spring Boot Swagger UI, and I'm copying this and copying this dependency, and again I'm going to my pom.xml, and here I am pasting it. So this is let me delete the comment, and there is one shortcut to rearrange our code, which is Control Shift and F. It will rearrange our code to proper position. So I'm closing this and I am restarting our application. And I'm going to browser, and let me open here localhost swagger.html. So if you see here, this is the documentation of our API, and we have, if I go here, this is our employee controller that we created, and this is our basic error controller, and this one is MVC, another other actuator related another controller. This is happening because we haven't tell anything to Swagger from where to pick up proper APIs, so it is scanning our entire code basically. So we have added Swagger, and we have seen the UI of it, but it is not configured yet. Meaning we need to specify the configuration. So we have discussed previously that if we don't provide configuration, Spring Boot will go with the default configuration, and that is what is happening right now. So we haven't configured anything, so Spring Boot is working with default configuration, and to configure we need to set up a docket object. So docket object is a builder, and the sole task of this object is to provide a primary interface for the Swagger, and it will provide the sensible defaults and convenience method to configure Swagger. So we need a docket object for Spring Boot configuration, and to create that we can use our bean annotation, and here I can create one function that will return docket, and let me give this name Swagger, and here this function will return everything. So here let me type like return, and here new, and this will return docket. So we have this constructor for that, and we have documentation type as Swagger underscore 2. This is the documentation, and the second option we're gonna select here is function to create the API selector, and here we need to provide a path. So this path is basically we are telling Swagger to which kind of path we need to take. So in predicate I can do something like this, path selectors, and I have this option. So you can use ent, you can use regex also. If you use let's say ent, then you can say you can do something like this. So it will take all the APIs which start with emp, but we will go with any for now, because we don't have much APIs and we don't need any of these extra features. So I'm doing any, it will take all the, I'm going to provide base package to scan for the API. So it won't scan entire project, it will just scan particular package. So that's here the separate package for controller we can use. I can pass that package, so it will only scan that controller package. So let me do something like and now I can do build. So this build function will build the docket object with this whatever options we have specified. Okay, and let me save this and restart the application. Started. So let me go here and refresh this page. So now you see we have only EMP controller. So all the rest of the packages here, before it was actuator and other Spring related APIs, we don't need them, right? So it is showing now only EMP. There is more configuration you can do here, such as you can provide API info here. Instead of after build, you can put something like API info, and I can pass API info function object. So let me create one function and name API info, and this function will return API info object. So this is also, I can use builder to build the API info object, and I can provide something like, I can give title, and here I can provide title. We can say EMP test project. So this is the title of the project, and here I can provide another thing, description, and here I can provide this is demo for Swagger, and here I can provide contract. So in big industries normally they have this contract and stuff, so they have their licensing and stuff, they can provide so many things here. So they have admin related information here. So let's say if this application is not working or provided documentation is not working, then they can contact admin. This is the license. If they have copyrights on the, or they have paid version of the API, then they can use this. You can provide license URL because you want your user to read those. So you can provide license URL here, and if you have versions, if you have multiple versions about your application, so I can say 1.0.0, and the last I can build. So if I pass this function here, then what it's going to do is, let me restart this application. If let me refresh this, and if you see here, all the information is here. So this is EMP test project, and we have, this is for demo, and this is website, email address, and then user information, license and stuff. So Swagger have many important annotation for better configurations, and let's see one by one. So in class level, we have one annotation. It's called at API, and it marks our class as a Swagger resource. Meaning, we will put this annotation at the controller class. That means that this is the Swagger resource. Means Swagger will take all the APIs from that class. Second, we have is four API level annotation for the better configuration, and the first one is API operation. So this annotation will describe the operation of specific URL, and second one we have is API parameter. So this is basically for the request parameters, and another one is we have API response. It will describe the response of the API, and the fourth one is API responses. So this is basically an array of API response. So let's say if we have multiple responses, then we need to merge them and make an array. So this will provide that feature. And the next one is the entity or model level configuration. So in here we have two APIs, API model and API model property. So if you remember, in our previous tutorial, we have created employee object, which was the task of the employee object was to hold data for like first name, last name, and addresses. So object. So these two annotation will help. So let's go in our Eclipse and add these annotations and see what it can do for us. Next thing we have is to discuss about the features. So let me go to the controller, and here if I open this controller, so we have couple of annotations that we can use. So let's say I can provide something like this API, and which is Swagger related annotation, you can see here. And let me select this, and here if I go and hit Control Enter, I have all the information that I can provide. So this is the value. You can put a description, you can put a value. If you have authorization related information, you can put it here. If you have consumes and produce related information, you can. So Or let's say you have multiple controllers, but you want to categorize based on some tag, so you can use this kind of tag and you can provide here. Let's say we have this controller is in hello category. If I save this, stop the application and start the application, if I go here and if I refresh this, you can see I have hello category, and inside that I have controller here. So this way you can categorize your APIs based on some condition or some logic, or you can go with other annotations and provide enough information so user can work on this. But normally we use value or description. Description is deprecated from 1.5, but support is still there, but we shouldn't use that. But we can use value instead of description, and you can put here information. And next we have is function level API, function level annotations, and that is with this particular API. So here I can say I can use this API operation, and if you see here we have this API operation, and inside that I can specify value. So here also if I do control and space, it is showing me all the possible value, possible attributes. And let's say if I use this value, and if I say here get all employee details, and if I control S save, stopping the server and restarting the server, and if I go here in my browser and refresh, you can see it is showing here the description, get all employee details here. Okay, so this way you can provide the description about your API at the API level. Next one we have is API responses. So let's say we have multiple responses. So let's check one response first, and then we will go with API responses. API response, and here if I say, let's say this API is returning 200 HTTP code, and we have message with it saying that successfully get, and I'm saving and restarting my application, and I'm going here and refreshing it. So if I open this, you see here so you can see those things here in description, and you can provide examples also if you want to tell them that this kind of response you will get. So this is default example, but you can provide here with example annotation and example property annotations. And next one we have is API responses. So I can specify multiple responses like this, and inside that I can put something like this, and inside that I can put a list of API responses. So it is basically just an array of API response, but just yeah. So in one tag you can specify multiple responses like this. So you can put you can do like this, and this is showing error because we need to import it. So control space is the shortcut for that. And so this way you can specify multiple responses. And another annotation we have is API parameter. So in here we are taking this request body with employee, right? So I can specify here something like this: API parameter, and here I can specify value. I'm saving it, and then I can provide another attribute such as this property is mandatory or not. So required is yes, as required equal to true. And if I hit save, stopping application and restarting it again. So here let me refresh this, and if you go here, this MP is showing star equal to require, because this is require we said, and here we put description hello world which is showing it. So if you want to explain to the user that what kind of a response you need, what kind of fields it needs, the description, it is mandatory or not, you can specify here. And another annotation we have is the annotations for our model. So I mentioned that this employee, normally in database we have this kind of entities we use. So we need to tell users about the object and what these objects what this object represents, or what are the fields inside it. So you can use these annotations, and so there are two annotations here. One is API model, and here I can provide a value or a description, and if I hit Ctrl S it is showing me. So let me provide description, and here I can pass something like employee object, and Ctrl S, stopping the application. And so if you go here, we have this model tab, and if I open this, we have employee there, and here you can see the description that I provide. And if you want to provide the description here at the field level, you can provide with another annotation, which is API model property, and here you can specify something like this. You can provide notes here saying that this represents unique ID, something like this. And if I save this, stop the application, and if I restart this, I can refresh this, and here if you see, we have description saying this employee ID represent unique ID. So that's all for now in this tutorial, but I recommend you people to go and play with Swagger, because it will help you to learn more tricks about Swagger, and it is really very helpful in real world applications at the time of development. Because let's say UI, so let's say UI and backend, we have two different teams. One guy, UI team's task is to develop the UI, and the backend team's task is to develop the backend, but we need to communicate. So every time a developer cannot go and explain them everything. So if you set up this Swagger, then just give them a link, and they will go through the link, and they will understand themselves. So it will reduce so much work. So that's why this is important. So go and play with it. And if you like my tutorials, please like and subscribe and share, because many more important videos are coming. And so see you in next one. Till then, like, subscribe, and keep learning. Thank you very much.